Welcome to Poker Live. Next question, Kristen. Why are there no women in poker? According to some stats, 95% of professional poker players are men.
Okay, well, this is an issue that elicits a lot of strong opinions. It's been debated for a long time. Certainly, there is a major gender imbalance in poker, although having said that, there are some amazing female poker players, some truly of world-class stature. But the question being, why is there such an imbalance between men and women? Now, some will swear back in blue that it's the culture, it's toxic, that it's misogynistic and sexist. I don't think that's the reason. I'm not saying that there isn't an element of that there isn't a sort of a boys' club mentality. Poker did originate as kind of a man cave type activity, the saloons, the gangsters of Vegas and so on. I understand that view, but if we were looking at the multiple variables that factor into it, what is the main thing that has prevented women from playing? And the first thing is to start at the early principles. There's never been a time when women were a sizable portion of the player pool. It's always been male dominated. That was the default. And the question is, how do we move more women into that space, given that it's always been a masculine activity and widely perceived as such? And I would say the first question is, why is it a problem that there aren't more women in poker? If it is because there's legions of women who are lining up wanting to play but are being deterred because they see just seas of men and a masculine culture, that would be tragic. There should be no barrier for women to play poker. It's a great activity for everybody, regardless of who you are or where you're from. The universality of poker and its accessibleness, regardless of your physical condition, etc., is one of the great things about poker. So no one should feel deterred. But is that the reason? I would argue that it's not like there was a sizable minority, 20, 30% being women, and they were like, no, I can't do this anymore. The culture is toxic. I'm not feeling welcome. I'm being, harassed or whatever, and therefore I'm no longer going to play. They're not entering poker to begin with, and that is a different motivation. Yes, it could be they could perceive it as a boys' club. That could be a factor. More likely, it's just they're not that interested in poker. And if that's the reason, there's nothing wrong with that. Poker is, first of all, high risk. People need a certain degree of risk tolerance. One of the aspects that people enjoy from poker is the tension, is the nervousness of being put under pressure, having difficult decisions thrust upon them. The actual direct risk that comes from playing the game is one of its enjoyable characteristics, one of the reasons people play. Men on average, not all men and definitely not all women being the reverse, but on average, men are more risk prone. That's one of the reasons men don't live as long as women. They take more risks. You can see all the videos online of men doing stupid things as a consequence of their innate willingness to take said risks. And so because poker is a risk-taking activity that appeals more to male personality types on average, then it's highly competitive. It's a bunch of people all cooperating in a set of rules, but competing within those rules. That is very much how men interact, both culturally and biologically. And so that kind of pecking order competitive world is a very masculine world. And women, when they're looking at the game, they will be interested in the players, they'll be interested in the people, they'll be curious to see, who's the best and why. But that's a product of mate selection. There's a lot of women who watch men compete in their various environments and will become attracted to them in part on that basis. For example, you see, football players in FIFA and so on, women having posters of them on the wall, etc. They may have no interest in the actual game of football/soccer. They might have a lot of interest in the actual players. And so when you watch games where, and I had a great conversation with a friend about this recently, if you watch games where it's female only in poker, the ladies' events in poker, the way they interact at the table could not be more different than men. There's a lot of caring. If someone gets a bad beat, everyone else at the table like takes time to see if that person's okay, and there's a lot of nurturing. You don't see that in a male environment, and it's not because men are being misogynistic. It's just that men are being men, and they're behaving as they would to a man if there's a woman at the table. And I think that's where the environment is going. If women are used to being treated a certain way by men, okay, and if they're at the poker table, they may not be treated that way. They may be treated like anybody else. And if you are in an environment where you're being treated differently to how you are normally being treated, you might perceive that as sexist, misogynistic, woman hating. Now, I don't want to say that there is no sexism or whatever in poker. I would argue that if you get enough men together in any environment, poker, sport, whatever, politics even, there's going to be an element of like...
locker room talk.
Yeah, exactly. There's a great way to put it. It's like, men are men, right? Let's be... but that said, I do think men... and this is a kind of different question, but I do think men play differently when they're around women. I do think that does have a dynamic at the table which influences the game in an interesting way, which women, if you're cold-blooded about it, you can exploit.
They play stuff, maybe. I don't know. So I do agree that more women are risk adverse, but we do enjoy talking to people and the social aspects of poker. But because we have more responsibility, and poker kind of carries a very heavy negative social stigma, that it does put a lot of women off. Can you imagine being, say you had kids and saying, I need a babysitter because I want to go play and gamble in a poker tournament? That just won't happen for many women.
That's a great point, actually. I mean, there are plenty of mothers who play poker. It's not totally insurmountable, and it's not a problem if you are a mother and play poker. That's great, but it's true that women do have more on their mind than just what they themselves could lose. There's a thought process of how that affects other people, the people around them, and so one of the reasons that we're talking about men, we're not actually talking about all men. The vast majority of the player pool are younger. Yeah. They're men up to the age of about 35, 40, or retirees. Okay, I think there's kind of a big age gap between the sort of middle age and then retirement. Because if you're younger, you may not have a family. And men who are married with children and all of the obligations, the mortgage, the panoply of responsibility and struggle, well, poker is way down the list of priorities for a lot of those men, particularly if they're not winning players, particularly if they're recreational types. Then every time they sit at a table, they have to factor in the opportunity cost of doing that. And women, I think, more instinctively do that from a younger age. They're more aware of how they're not just an island, they're part of a unit, a family unit, a community. And if you're a retiree, well, then the kids have grown up, they've left the nest, they're presumably okay. You've worked hard your whole career, and now you've got your nest egg saved up, and you want to enjoy yourself. And one of the things you can do that's not, physically demanding, doesn't harm you in your senior years, is sitting at a poker table and playing. So yes, there's a gender imbalance, but there's also an age imbalance among the men themselves. If you get the percentages of young men, it's going to be very high, and the overwhelming majority, not all, this is all generalities, but the majority are going to be childless. They're going to be unmarried, and they're not going to have these life responsibilities, and they can take these risks without the same consequences.
What about marketing to poker? The thing is, one of the reasons why I'm not in poker is because no one looks like me. It's just a sea of men. And when you look at the ambassadors for poker, take WPT, there's this thing called Royal Flush Girls, and they're all supermodels. They all don't play poker.
So how are they not looking like you? They look exactly like you.
Oh, that's nice. But still, I think because of the marketing, perhaps many women don't feel like they can enter the poker space.
Well, it's true that it's not marketed towards women. There's not poker. If you go to poker websites, the ambassadors, the characters, etc., yes, they are aimed towards male engagement. That's because it appeals to men. We should appeal to women. We should at least give women permission to feel like they can join without being deterred by all of this other stuff. But I am skeptical that, given the choice, why would women play poker when they could play Candy Crush? What's the...
What an attack.
Yeah. No, but I mean that seriously. Why would women do something that risks money, is highly competitive, puts you under pressure, and you're situated for long periods, folding a lot?
I do agree.
Having patience. Why would you do that when you could do something like watching paint dry? There is something there. Women just might not be that interested in poker at the end of the day.
I do agree. The idea of sitting at a poker table among big men in hoodies with sunglasses on, who are socially awkward, and you're just looking at cards for hours and hours, doesn't really interest me as much as Candy Crush. And I don't know if that's a bad thing.
It's not. There's the reason why, this is the bottom line, people. The reason why there aren't more women playing poker is because most women have better things to do. That's it. They have other things that are of greater importance than playing poker. We should absolutely remove any barrier. We do not want any woman who says, I would love to play poker, but I don't feel that's my place. I don't feel I have a role there. I don't feel I'm welcome. That's a disaster. We absolutely should do that. But we shouldn't assume that 50-50 gender balance is a worthwhile goal in and of itself when men and women have different preferences when it comes to this kind of thing. I don't think we'll ever have a 50-50 balance on this particular activity because it was designed by men to satisfy the interests of men, and consequently it appeals to men.
So bring it back to you guys. Why is there a gender imbalance of poker? Is that a problem? If we were to encourage more women in poker, how might we do it? Leave your thoughts and comments down below, but please be nice. Imagine me or your grandmother looking at these comments. Bye.